Hello and welcome to another Retro Crazy. Hopefully you can tell what's going on today. We're looking at the Atari VCS, also known as the Atari 2600. The Atari Video Computer System, known as the VCS, or the 2600 as it was renamed from November '82, was originally released in September 1977, bundled with two joysticks, and by joysticks we mean these things: a pair of paddles and a combat cartridge game. Later they bundled Pac-Man instead. At launch there were a whole whopping 9 simple titles, all low resolution games on 2K cartridges. That included Air Sea Battle, Basic Math, Blackjack, Combat, Indy 500, Starship, Street Racer, Surround and Video Olympics. The first big title released on the VCS was Space Invaders, which was launched in 1980 on a 4K cartridge, and by 1983-84 cartridges had hit a whopping 8K in size. It was the major market leader for a long time, with the only real competition from the likes of Mattel and Coleco. I have 3 systems here. The early Sixers, as they were known, for the 6 switches that they have, were made from launch up to 1980, when the difficulty switches were moved to the rear, and then obviously later on the 2600 Junior I featured in an earlier video was launched, and that was 1986. It was also in 1980 when the title 2600 was added. So I have 3 of these. They've not been powered on in probably decades. I had to go digging through a lot of boxes to find everything. So let's look at them. Let's see what we can do. We'll start with the slightly later 1980 model, and then we'll look at these Sixers together. So let's see how this one comes apart. These were always supplied with a huge RF cable. They are pre-fitted, they go through a hole in the back, and it does look very reminiscent to the Atari 400, so I'm going to guess this disconnects as normal inside. On the back I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, so let's get this apart. With the top cover off, we can see that the inset panel pops off. As suspected, we have a cable here which we can disconnect, and the board lifts out. Disconnect the RF cable, and it comes straight out the back, which means the plastics can go aside for cleaning. RF cable at this time we don't need. This is what we need. Now these can be very fragile, and at this moment there really aren't replacements. Carefully lift them off and put them to the side. I'm not going to try and clean them because that'll damage them. What I'll do is I'll turn them over so that the black surface is up rather than the slightly dirty side. This is the RF shield. We can see what I'm going to guess is a 7805 down in the corner. Nice large capacitor which will need replaced. Small capacitor here, and I'm going to guess there's going to be some more hidden away here. This is part of the RF shield makeup. This will need carefully peeled off its sticky back. It's designed to stick on and just extend the RF shield over. They almost invariably get broken. So I'm going to peel this one off and then try and gently peel these off. However, they tend to get damaged. In fact, scratch that, I'm going to leave these. Unless I know the switches are faulty, then I can clean them. As you can see, there are some nice big gaps. I can get some deoxit in and clean them without actually removing this. I just need to peel them off of this RF shield. With those peeled to the side, I have a number of tabs that are all round that need bent out of the way. And hopefully with those out of the way, this will come up and lift out of the way. That can now go to the side. These tabs are part of the RF shielding on the underside. So I'm just going to do some final straightening so that it will go through the circuit board and allow me to remove it completely. And with that removed, it can go to the side. And here we have the core of the 2600. I can see some very, very dodgy soldering. That chip, for example, is sitting up on this left edge, so it hasn't been fitted properly before being soldered. It's just been built very, very quickly. So a couple of things I'm going to replace. This cap, this 7805, and again a lot of these are being done just out of preventative measures. They may still work fine. Interesting to see that that part of the heatsink has been well bent. So I'm just going to straighten that. Again, I'm going to guess this is maybe one of the not made in Sunnyvale, California models. Let's have a look. Oh, made in Ireland. So somebody in Ireland was a little bit too eager just to slap it together and get it out the door. They maybe had a quota to reach, so they weren't too fussed about minor imperfections, especially when you wouldn't see them, as long as the system worked. So let's get on and get these components replaced. I'm going to start off with the 7805, and interestingly, let me zoom down. It's been soldered. The screw head has been soldered onto the ground plane. So I'm going to have to disconnect it from the top on the nut. As the heatsink is freely moving, I don't think there's any thermal paste between the heatsink and the ground plane. I think it's what little there was is between the 7805 and the heatsink. Now with the 7805 done, we'll move on and we'll do this large cap. So with everything replaced, let's clean up this, because it is looking a bit dusty and grubby in there. as normal, 99.9% isopropyl alcohol, and a Q-tip or cotton bud. So with that all done, we're going to use a little bit of deoxit, contact cleaner in the switches. Now the last thing I'm going to do before I start reassembly is see if I can do something with the tops of the switches. You can see this one, for example, is quite shiny, and yet the one next to it is quite dull. Bit shinier, bit duller. So I'm just going to move these out of the way, and I'm going to use what's available in the UK, Brasso. It is a metal polish, and it comes as either a sort of thick cream which you can put on, or this style which is as a wadding that's already impregnated with the Brasso. I'm just going to grab a small section. I don't think I need a huge amount. It does have a unique smell. If you've ever used Brasso, you'll know exactly what I mean. So I've got quite a large piece here. However, I'm just going to try cleaning the switch tops, and hopefully you can see the contamination coming off. It won't make it perfect, but what it will do is make it much nicer than it was. Another way is to use something like a Dremel with a polishing tip and some polishing compound and just work around the switches. You could take the switches off, dismantle them, and clean them that way. There are a number of ways of doing it. You can see just the amount that's coming off. The longer you do this, the nicer the job. Now the last thing I'm going to do is just go over with a cloth and lift off any of the residue. And while it's not perfect, it's certainly brought a little bit of shine back to most areas. Not all, but it does look a lot better than it was. So before final reassembly, I'm going to go and wash. So with everything now back together, yes, I've put the lovely RF shield back on, but I do that because I like to keep them original. I know a lot of people will just leave them off, and that's fine, that's their choice and preference. This will now go to the side, and I'm going to go and wash the plastics. Well, that's the case, all nice and clean. I did pop out the front fascia panel for cleaning, which was worthwhile because it was very dirty inside. However, with that all done, we can look at how all this goes back together. And with that done, that's the first system complete. I'm not too worried. These are normally quite robust. There's not a huge amount that can go wrong internally. So let's pop it to the side and let's look at a sixer. So this is the first of two sixers that I have. Straight away I see a difference. This has a dust cover for the connector. Okay, not necessarily working very well. It's not fully coming down. Not too worried about that. And obviously the difficulty no longer on the back. but at the front where they were originally designed. So let's get this torn down. I can see 8 screws straight away, and might I add 8 slightly rusty screws. So the top case in this is absolutely disgusting, really filthy. The amount of dust that you can see in the grime, I'm going to guess it's probably paint, the white dots. Let's pop this to the side. Oh, and a slightly different board. Yeah, just a slightly different board. Massive RF shield. We've still got our 7805 tucked down here. We've got a cap, 2 caps, kind of exactly where they were on the 4-pot board. This is slightly different, and I'm going to guess this is the jumper going down to the second board, which it is. So it looks like they've put the control sticks, the joystick ports and the power on a different one. I'm noticing this one is actually kind of twisted. I'll have a look at that when we get there. So I'm going to try disconnecting this. Wow, it's tight. It's well in there. There are a couple of tabs. That's it, starting to move. There we go. I've got 2 screws down here and the RF cable. So the RF cable is actually routed slightly different to how I reassembled the last one. The inside is disgusting. If memory serves me, this particular VCS came all the way from France. My father found it at a grenier and purchased it for me. It probably cost 10 to 15 euros at the time, so somewhere between sort of 8 and 12 pounds, I would guess. Let's lift this. Oh, right, okay, we got a problem here. Now, is the board damaged or not? Every single solder joint has gone. So we're going to need to sort that, and I think just out of caution I will reflow all of the switches. Let's pop this out, and this, because I've undone the 2 screws at the bottom, yep, thought they were screwed into that, will lift out. That's disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting. That's a mix of, I'm going to guess, animal hair and fluff and goodness knows what. Yeah, let's not touch that. Definitely going to get a good washing. So let's pop this open and see what's hiding inside. And there we go. That's one large solid piece of metal. And there we have the main board for this. Interestingly, this is actually screwed down. And it looks like it's screwed straight into the board. Okay. I'm going to have a look underneath. Ooh, right, okay. I'm going to take this off. This is cardboard. And I'm going to reflow some of this as well, because you can see, let me zoom down. Yeah, it's looking a bit crusty and disgusting. This is what happens when you buy something from what is effectively a car boot. You don't know what condition it's going to be, you don't know how long it's been outside, and has there been any water ingress? First things first, let's give this a clean. Well, that's all done. You notice a lot of the yellow has gone. Same down the edges here. There's still some here, and it's flux from manufacture. The board was caked in it, and in certain areas still has. But I think that might have saved a lot of the components from being a lot worse. So thank you, Atari, for your poor cleanup. So let's see if we can first of all reflow these. Everything seems fine. I see no damaged traces. All the solder points look good. I've clipped off a leg that was typical Atari, almost touching another contact point and resoldered those. And I've now removed this old electrolytic capacitor from here. And that's what I'm about to replace. If you get a capacitor that has no positive or negative marking that you can see, like this one, hopefully you can see the black band on one end. Hopefully that denotes the negative. I'm hoping that that's all done, but with the amount of oxidation and reflowing I had to do, I'm going to take a cartridge, I'm going to pop it open, I'm going to put some deoxit on it, and I'm going to run it into the cartridge port itself and try and make sure that all those lovely contact points are as clean as they can be. With this board done, I'm now going to remount it back into its RF shield.
So apologies, my mic ran out of charge, so I'm having to do this as a voiceover. Now that that's done, I'm going to bring in the control board with the switches, and we're going to look at recapping and doing everything. First off, we need to lift off carefully these foam discs and place them safely to the side. They're very difficult to get replacements for. There are possible alternatives that I'm going to look at, but at the moment, yeah, these are really fragile. When it comes to refitting, fit them upside down because the nice black side will be face up. Now on here we've got two caps, we've got the 7805, and we do actually have a third capacitor I'll be replacing. First off, I'm going to give everything a good dust down, and then a clean, and then we'll look at replacing some of these components. So this is the switch that we noticed was very loose and all the solder points had broken. So this is the first thing I'm going to do, is sort that and reflow all of the switches. You can see there's not a lot of solder being applied to actually hold the switches down. So by increasing the amount of solder, it gets a better grip and it means it will last longer. I've also noticed that on a number of kits that are sold on eBay, they replace this polyester capacitor, so I'm just going to do the same. Next I'm going to replace the 7805 and then run some deoxit into all the switches, operate them, and then we can put this to the side, open the next one, go through the same process again, and then clean up both cases. That's the plastics now all clean. Everything's been taken apart and given a good scrub. Kept all original stickers. And what I'm going to do now is rebuild the first one. Okay, on reassembly, I've spotted I put a cap in upside down. So I'm going to have to pop this out, swap the cap round, and then see you back at this stage. And there we are, that's the second one put together. Let's go and see what happens with these two when we power them up. So here we are at testing, everything's set up, the one we've just rebuilt, ready to go. Let's see what happens, if anything. Well, we've got Pac-Man. Picture's not the best, there is some corruption there. We may need to look at that later. Well, let's see if it works. I'd say this definitely works. So before I get too engrossed in this, let's move on to the next one. So with that swapped over, let's see what happens this time. Yeah, I'm not very good at this one, obviously. Maybe not the most enthralling game in the world, but it works. Oh dear. Well, that'll be it for this part of the video. Join me next time for part 2 when we look at the rest of the 2600 restoration, the third and final one, and maybe we'll see about cleaning up these systems a little bit more, but that's all for part 2. So thank you for watching. Remember, if you like this, to like and subscribe,
and I'll see you on the next Retro Crazy.